Do you want to also talk about Nicaragua?
Yeah, well, Nicaragua is a very interesting case. There was a armed revolution in the late 1970s, I believe, led by what were called the Sandinistas. They overthrew through a U.S.-backed dictatorship called the Somoza dictatorship and began a program of literacy campaigns and improving ordinary people's lives, social investment, all that sort of good stuff. Which was an affront to the U.S. because it threatened its interests in the country. So Reagan launched essentially a dirty war and backed a very vicious paramilitary organization called the Contras. The opposition, the right wing opposition, won an election, I think, about roughly a decade into the Sandinista revolution, and they governed. But then the Sandinistas won back power democratically several years later. And the US has been singling out Nicaragua in the region because it doesn't like its government. In the last few years, it's really tightened things up. It's tightened the thumb screws. It's really having a detrimental effect, on the country. Obviously, in a similar way to sanctions against Cuba. But in spite of this, and in spite of a sort of mini coup in 2018, I believe, the government is still in power, and things seem to have calmed down. It was another U.S. failure. Uh, the media has completely misrepresented the situation. It's claimed that there are a lot more political prisoners than there actually are. It's misrepresented the reasons why people are being detained. I mean, it's not publicizing the good things that Nicaragua has done. For example, it's the only country, I think, in the entire Western Hemisphere that is entirely food sovereign.
Yeah.
It grows all of its own food, but it's again a similar situation to Venezuela. Uh, and it's a sign of the U.S.'s decline as a major world power and its inability to really impose its will anymore. The poor and the marginalized in the developing world can stand up to US empire and win and build better societies in the face of the hugest adversity that you could possibly think of. At the same time, the US is still able to inflict a huge amount of damage even
Yeah.
when it's losing,
Yeah.
of which Nicaragua and Venezuela and Cuba are prime examples.